சார் ஆக்சுவலாக மணிவண்ணன் சாருக்கு பதிலாக வந்து இப்போ இது ப்ரெசன்ட் போட்டிருக்காரு பாருங்க மாதேஷ் பாபு அவரு தான் வந்து ஆக்சுவலாக இப்போ ப்ரெசன்ட் பண்ணுறாரு. அவர் வர முடியாதுன்னு ஏதோ சுச்சுவேஷன். எஸ் ஆக்சுவலாக ஃபஸ்ட்டு செஷன் மணிவண்ணன் போட்டிருந்தோம். அவருக்கு பதிலாக மாதேஷ் பாபு அது ப்ரெசன்ட் பண்ணியிருக்காருங்க பாருங்க. அதுதான் சார். தேங்க்யூ. மறந்துட்டேன் நான் சொல்ல. தேங்க்யூ சார். मंगेश डॉक्टर मंगेश सर ओके सर आरन सर சொல்லுங்க आरन सर சொல்லுங்க सर
No ma'am, am I audible?
Yes yes sir.
Okay sir.
Okay thank you.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning, sir. Good morning, very much.
Good morning to everyone, sir. Good morning.
Sir. Good morning, sir.
Yes.
பூபு சார் மேம் வரல வேற மீட்டிங் இருக்குன்னாங்க சார்.
Okay, madam, then you can continue. Stop. You have just 1 minute to go.
ஓகே சார்.
Okay.
Madam, get ready, madam.
எஸ் எஸ் சார். சார் சொல்லுங்க சார். எஸ் சார்.
Yes, you can get ready, madam. It's time up.
ஓகே சார்.
Yes, sir. Yeah, sure, no. So, good morning to everyone else present here. So, welcome everyone to the last day of Faculty Development Program on Future Trends in Shipping. On behalf of our AMET management, principal, faculty, and students of Marine Engineering Department, we cordially invite you all in this gathering. So, let us start the session with presidential address given by our principal, Bhupri Bhaskaran sir. So, I would like to invite our principal sir to give presidential address.
Good morning to one and all. I first thank our Chancellor, Vice Chancellor, Pro Chancellor, Pro Vice Chancellor, Registrar, and of course, we should not forget one and above our Dean Academics, Dr. Sashalata Madam. for giving us this platform. First and the foremost is this platform is a very good opportunity where cadets, faculties, and other institution members are all participating and really taking away a lot of knowledge from this platform. And of course, they will be using it in the next coming, academic years and so on for academics and other purposes. Here, I do invite our speaker today, Mr. Madesh Babu, faculty, Eurotech Maritime Academy, Cochin. Yes, of course, there was another speaker who was supposed to speak, but unfortunately, there is a small change due to ill health or something. Sir has stepped down, and our Madesh Babu sir, willingly in a very, very short notice, I should say, sir, we welcome you all. We welcome you, sir. And, here a very good opportunity is here given to you. Now, the topic is here, I could see, recycling of ships. Yes, today, the recycling process, if the recycling process is very well taken care of and done in all departments and organizations, I tell you, we can save our, earth in a very eco-friendly manner. Like plastics recycling and so many things we talk about. But recycling of ship is a unique idea. Ships which are aged above a particular year and they have given double bottom ships will be phased out, single hull ships are already phased out. Then like this, phasing out of ships are coming out with new technologies coming in. What are we going to do with them? Now here we have our eminent speaker, Babu sir, will now share the platform, followed by another speaker, of course, Dr. Sir is also there, and he will also be sharing his experiences. Though we are busy schedule, you have taken enough pain and you have come here to grace our occasion. Of course, in emergencies, it is very, very difficult to want to adopt things. You have made use of the opportunity, you are making use of the opportunity, I should say. So we welcome you, sir, on behalf of AMET in all means. I welcome all the cadets, faculties to this last day of program. Though it is said as last day, we should not stop with this. This 5 days of program has given immense, ideas, views, and knowledge. So we hope we conduct more programs of this kind, a fruitful program like this kind, and share our experiences. Thank you very much, sir. I hand over the mic to the organizing team, Dr. Shanti Madam. You can please proceed.
Yes, sir. Welcome, sir. Another faculty, Dr. L. Mangesh also is there, sir.
Okay. Yes, I saw. Yeah, Dr. V.L. Mangesh, sir, is also there. Sir, I welcome you also in this platform. Of course, yes, it's going to be a lengthy session, 1 hour 15 minutes each. I do have another program also, not a problem, at 11 o'clock and 12 o'clock and so on. Don't worry. I'm hearing the recycling and your program is going to come out. So both I will be with you here to hear, and my cadets will enjoy it, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Welcome you, sir. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for the welcome address.
Thank you.
Thank you, Principal, sir, for your valuable address. Next, I would like to introduce about our resource person, Mr. Madesh Babu, who is a faculty in Eurotech Maritime Academy, Kochi. He is a postgraduate in naval architecture from Indian Maritime University and completed his undergraduate from Anna University. He had vast experience in automotive industry as well as shipbuilding. He is in teaching profession from the year 2014, and he will be explaining about recent advancement in shipbuilding and legislation for recycling of ships. Now, I would like to call upon our resource person, Mr. Madesh Babu, sir, to give his presentation. Now, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir, for the welcome address.
Thank you, sir. Welcome, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And for introducing me, thank you very much. And Chancellor, Vice Chancellor, Pro VC, Principal, Dean, Chief Officers, and faculty and delegates from various institutes and dear cadets, a warm good morning to everyone. It's very pleasure for me to present on the topic today on proposal for enactment of legislation for recycling of ships. So I want to present it today in memory of late Mr. U.S. Ramesh, who was the ex-director of IMU Visakhapatnam campus, whom we lost in the last month due to COVID-19. He was my project guide during my postgraduate program, and my project title was on energy consumption for ship recycling. So he was my guide. I lost him in the last month, so I want to present in memory of late Mr. U.S. Ramesh. So I'll proceed further.
Sorry, sir. Sorry to hear our U.S. Ramesh sir, resting. It's very difficult to hear. Yes. I heard his name also in certain occasions in IMU programs.
Yes,
a very enthusiastic person I heard.
Yes,
but I've not seen him in personal. One of the IMU meets in Chennai, when all the other IMU members and also directors and other vice chancellors and others, they came. Yes. I could recognize his face a little bit, but not much. We are very sorry to lose him, sir.
Yes.
Please proceed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Okay, I'll proceed further.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Proceed, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. So, in regard to today's topic, which I will be presenting, I will be covering. I will be introducing on ship recycling, and to get an idea on what is the age or overall age of a age profile of a ship, I will discuss on life cycle of ship, and then age profile of various types of ships, and then stakeholders in the area of ship recycling, and followed by that guidelines, codes and regulations in the area of ship recycling, and how do we follow, we in our nation, how do we follow those guidelines, codes and regulations, how do we carry out the recycling process in accordance to those conventions, and how do we carry out the dismantling process, and how do we carry out the material recovery and reuse it properly. And at the end, I will conclude with the conclusion of proposal for enactment of legislation for recycling of ships by listing its merits with that. So, like already told in the initial introduction part, I got a list of projects to be done as part of my postgraduate program. So, when I started working on ship recycling, the quote from Ship Recycling Association India, that is, to make, we have to break, but in the end, we create. That's a quote which impressed me very much and motivated me to carry out this project as part of my postgraduate program. And I take this opportunity to share my experience when I visited the All Ship Recycling Yard. So what is ship recycling? It's a process of dismantling an obsolete vessel structure for scrapping or disposal. Rather than using ship breaking, scrapping and likewise, I used to use the word recycling. We'll see why in the upcoming slides. When does it become obsolete? One is there are various factors the ship owner decide to dismantle the vessel or sell it for scrap. Basically after 25 to 35 or 25 to 30 years of service, or when repairs and retrofitting cannot be financially justified, the ship owner decides to sell the vessel either for further trade or for scrapping. So the various factors began to take the decision to take the decision of recycling is, one is economic and social changes, and other one is technological changes or by means of disrepair, or it can be due to misfortune. So when we say economic and social changes, we all know the growth and development of roads and rail systems has impacted much on shipping industry, in turn which has resulted in reducing the size of coastal fleets. And on the other hand, the repair and maintenance cost also increases with the increase in age of the ship, isn't it? So as does the, just imagine, for example, the aged vessel carrying out some maintenance operation or retrofitting, it is simply we waste time in doing those works just imagine about the term non-revenue earning periods, isn't it? So when the vessel is out of service, undergoing such work. So one reason to scrap the vessel is due to economic and social changes. Other reason is like maybe due to technological changes. We all have witnessed the development in propulsion technology. For example, starting from sail, then we have seen steam turbines and gas turbines coming into picture as primary power source, and then later to diesel engines, and then we have come to now hybrid propulsion systems, isn't it? Which has caused many vessels to be scrapped when the owner realizes it is no longer financially viable, isn't it? So the other reason is disrepair. After certain service of vessel, if you see the condition of hull due to corrosion and other factors, due to age factor, it have resulted in much cost for maintenance purposes. So instead of maintaining the vessel, the owner decides to scrap the vessel due to the age factor, keeping in mind the cost of maintenance is going to be high, isn't it? So the other one factor is due to misfortune, which is maybe due to accidental damages as a result of collision or running aground or being dismasted in storms, which has led many vessels to be scrapped through salvage rather than undergoing repairs, which is going to be costing very much, isn't it? So therefore, when a ship reaches its stage, it becomes necessary to discontinue its operation, and therefore we dismantle the vessel and recycle the material which was used during the construction, like this. So here I would like to highlight that I will be using the word ship recycling throughout this presentation rather than breaking, dismantling or scrapping, because we know just by recycling, like our Bhupati sir has highlighted, it's just by recycling the construction material and components, the demand for natural resources for producing the same materials is drastically reduced, with consequent reduction in pollution. So when we say reduction in pollution, it directly results in reducing CO2 emissions, and which in turn we can contribute towards Paris Convention, where we can meet the challenges in the area of climate change, isn't it? So these are the reasons why the ship owner decides to scrap the vessel, and we recycle the materials recovered there. And if you see the life cycle of ship, we know we start from the owner's requirement in the design stage, based on which we carry out basic design, and then go for detailed design, where we go for constructional design using AutoCAD and other softwares available, and then we take it for construction, starting with steel laying ceremony and up to launching and delivering based on the acceptance of owner. And to maintain the vessel efficiently, we go through maintenance operation following the guidelines given by class societies. And once the owner realizes the vessel is not economically viable, he decides to scrap the vessel, and we take it for recycling. And to get to give you an average age profile of a merchant vessel, we know it's around 25 to 30 years, we say. But due to regulations are more stronger and stricter for passenger vessels. For example, the underwater area inspection, the number of underwater inspection is more compared to other cargo vessels, isn't it? So the age profile of passenger ships can be even more than 35-40 years due to its better maintenance. So who are the stakeholders in the area of ship recycling? One is we start from ship owner, and then demolition broker, cash buyer, local agents, and scrapyard operators. A ship owner is one who decides to end the economic life of a vessel when the maintenance cost of vessel starts to exceed possible revenue, or when the vessel seems to be not suitable for second-hand market, it's likely to be sold on for scrapping. So this ship owner will decide, and then he will be contacting any demolition broker, and then demolition broker will look for any cash buyers, maybe directly from a ship recycling yard itself, or maybe some brokers available in the market, and he will be taking it to any ship recycling yard operators attention, and then it will be sold there for scrapping. So we all know the reason for the rise, ups and downs of the ships sold or depends mainly because of the market conditions, which is decided based on the factor, the cost of used steel and then the presence of metals available in the market like this. Not only that, the available of ship for resale. If the freight movement is around the globe is very good, then the ship available for dismantling is going to be less, then the cost is going to be more. Likewise, certain factors decides the cost of the vessel which will be taken for tender or bid for scrapping there. So like we have certain guidelines, codes and regulations in the area of design, construction, maintenance, renovation, retrofitting, through various surveys, etc. for running the vessel throughout its life service. IMO has developed the guidelines, codes and regulations for the purpose of ship recycling also. Let us see from where it came into picture. Normally it is taken care of by MEPC, that is Marine Environmental Pollution Committee. So in 2000, during an MEPC session, that was 44th MEPC session, where IMO's attention went into the area of ship scrapping. What happens in that area? Because there were many casualties due to accidents, and there were some news that they pollute the coastal areas likewise. So IMO thought that why not we set up some instructions, some guidelines in the area of ship recycling also. So it started from 2000, from 44th MEPC session. So followed by that, in 2003, guidelines were developed to finalize the regulations for ship recycling. So in order to advise all stakeholders in the recycling process, like initially in the introductory session, like Sir said, each and everyone has the responsibility to result in good, environmentally friendly ship recycling. Okay, so therefore these guidelines were developed. There were some guidelines developed to advise all stakeholders in the recycling process, starting from shipbuilding administrations and maritime equipment supplying countries, flag port and recycling states, and intergovernmental organizations, commercial bodies such as ship owners, ship builders, repairers, and recycling work. So each and everyone's responsibility was highlighted through this session. In 2003. So the IMO set up a committee in 2000 to collect the information what is happening in the area of ship scrapping, and they want to set up some guidelines there. So through that study, what they have identified is, without any doubt, if properly handled, ship recycling is a green industry, isn't it? But to stress the importance of the responsibility of various stakeholders, we have to develop some guidelines. That is what they realized at that time. So the guidelines also recognize that although the principle of ship recycling may be sound, the working practices and environmental standards in the yard ought to be taken care of, especially directly by the countries who are involved in the ship recycling. Okay. So also all of the stakeholders should be actively involved in contributing towards minimizing these potential problems in the yards. And not only that, even the ship owners got some responsibility by bringing the concept of green passport into the picture. We stressed much on a document which should contain the inventory of all materials used in the construction of a ship, which are potentially hazardous to human health or the environment, which would be carried throughout its service. Even though it is sold to other owners, it should be handed over properly up to it is reached to the ship recycling operator. It should be maintained clearly. All the changes has to be recorded clearly, so that when we come to recycling, we can identify the potential hazardous which is very dangerous, and we can dispose it as per the guidelines. That was the idea of bringing some regulations by IMO in the area of recycling. So Basel Convention guidelines has dealt with the identification of potential hazardous materials on board, and they stressed on we should develop a method for handling these materials, and it stressed the need of best practices to be followed by the ship recycling operators. So followed by 43rd MEPC session at 53rd session in 2005. So globally applicable ship recycling regulations for international shipping and recycling facilities were stressed. So those regulations were stressed in the area of design, construction, operation and preparation of the ships so as to facilitate safe and environmentally sound recycling without compromising the safety and operational efficiency of ships. And second, the operation of ship recycling facilities is in a safe and environmentally sound manner. And third, the establishment of an appropriate enforcement mechanism for ship recycling. So you can identify the ship owner as a responsibility through green passport, whereas the ship recycling yard has a responsibility of preparing proper ship recycling process plan, where you should take the responsibility of identifying the hazardous material, disposing it as per the guidelines without any causing any pollution to the environment. So along with those, how do we develop these guidelines? One was by Basel Convention and then Hong Kong Convention, which we call as Hong Kong Convention, since it was held in Hong Kong, China from 11 to 15 May 2009, which was attended by 63 countries delegates there. So this convention aimed at ensuring that ships, when being recycled after reaching their end of their lives, it doesn't pose any unnecessary risk to the human health, safety to the environment and to the environment. Okay. So it addresses all the issues around ship recycling, including the fact that ships sold for scrapping may contain environmentally hazardous substances, for example, asbestos and heavy metals, hydrocarbons, ozone depleting substances, etc. So therefore, it addresses that we should develop and work about the working and environmental conditions at many of the ship recycling locations in the global we have to take care of. So the regulations cover, like said initially, the design, construction, operation and preparation of ship so as to facilitate safe and environmentally sound recycling without compromising the safety and operational efficiency of ship, and then the operation of ship recycling facility in a safe and environmentally sound manner, and it should result in securing the smooth withdrawal of ships that have reached the end of their operating lives. So as part of, as a result of entry into force of this Hong Kong Convention, ships to be sent for recycling will be required to carry an IHM, that is inventory of hazardous material, which will be specific to each ship. An appendix to the convention will provide a list of hazardous material, the installation or use of which is prohibited or restricted in the shipyards, ship repair yards, and ships of what is to the convention. And the vessel will be required to, ships will be required to have an initial survey in order to verify the inventory of hazardous material, additional surveys during the life of ship, and the final survey prior to recycling. And the ship recycling yards will be required to provide a ship recycling plan specifying a manner in which the vessel will be recycled based on its particulars and its IHM. So like we have IACS, that is International Association of Classification Society. We have something called as ISRA, which is International Ship Recycling Association, in order to ensure environmentally safe recycling of ships. So we'll, as a study of IMO in 2000, it has identified that during the process of recycling the ships, nothing goes to waste. All the materials and equipments are almost entirely reused. For example, steel, which can be used for manufacturing fresh steel by recycling, and then we can use it for constructional, civil constructional purposes, or maybe used for fabrication of container components, for example. And ships generators can be used ashore. Batteries can be used in the local economic areas, whereas hydrocarbons on board can be used in nearby industries, and those light fittings can be used ashore likewise. So none of the materials is wasted, everything is reused. Almost 95% of materials, or 90 to 95% of materials in the ship are reused during recycling. So let us come to the ship recycling scenario in India. So it's not new to us. We have witnessed it. I mean, we have seen through the history. In our nation, it takes place from 1912 in Kolkata and Mumbai. Due to the need of steel scrap was much, the cost was very high, which resulted in those countries having good ship recycling yard facilities will be having more profit there. So as part of that, in 1984, during the first economic recession, the fleet owners decided, most of the fleet owners decided, instead of maintaining the vessel, better we will scrap the vessel and go for recent trend like this. So as a result of that, many ships were put in stock for demolition. So as a result, what happened? Labor got very expensive, and the sale of those steel scrap cost went down due to much availability. So meanwhile, what happened in India and some other eastern countries offer cheaper labor, and therefore we became the destination for ship scrapping industry. And due to due to the availability of favorable parameters for beaching method, like we had high tidal range and then firm seabed, gentle seaward slope we had in the coast of Cambay in near to Holland village. So we decided to set up a ship recycling yard near Holland due to its favorable parameters. And the first vessel was beached at Holland on 13th February 1983, from which we had a good statistic development in the area of ship recycling. Many vessels came to India for dismantling. So we are the leader. India is leading in this ship recycling area, and not only that. So due to the conventions we have seen, international guidelines and conventions, we also realized we have to take some care to result in environmentally friendly ship recycling. First, Central Pollution Control Board, they came into picture by providing environmental guidelines for ship scrapping industry in order to minimize the effect of the yards on the surrounding environment through proper location of breaking yards and by preparing emergency management plan. And these guidelines also gives us the description of pollution control measures regarding various wastage like solid waste, air pollution, water pollution, noise pollution, and also the aspects of, it covered the aspects of workers' safety. And next to CPCB, since Gujarat government was actively involved there, GMB, Gujarat Maritime Board, also actively involved from since the year 2000, taking the safety measures for beaching the vessel from since 2000. So initially there was no permission required for beaching the vessel or starting the cutting operation. Later, due to some incidents, due to some casualties, such that gas were not removed properly, which resulted in fire accidents, then they came up with the concept of gas-free certificate. Only then cutting process can start. And not only that, there were some petitions filed in Supreme Court of India by some socialists who want to bring up some regulations to make it proper, use the materials recovered properly, and to make it safe and environmentally sound recycling. So Supreme Court of India also came into a picture from 2007 as part of that. As a result of that, based on the Supreme Court order, ship breaking regulation 2013 was formulated from and came into picture in 2013, which was framed by Ministry of Steel, because ship breaking comes under Ministry of Steel department. They have framed some certain guidelines which is to be followed by the ship recycling yard owners. So it gave up a clear idea on international and national guidelines, codes and regulations. So we have to follow that, and based on which we will have to carry out the ship recycling process in our nation. Let us see how do we follow that. So before that, let's see the ship recycling statistics. If you see that, like already highlighted, we are the leading part in that. For example, if you see between 2006 to 15, we have recycled around say 5,889 vessel likewise. So top 5 are India, also China, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Korea, Turkey likewise. So what's the statistics as of now? So according to data released by NGO shipbreaking platform, 630 ocean-going commercial ships and offshore units were sold in 2020, out of which 446 large tankers, bulkers, floating platforms, cargo and passenger ships were broken on the 3 beaches in South Asia, amounting around 90% of GT, dismantled globally. And as per the official data of GMB, during the year 2017 to 18, 253 ships were dismantled, and in 2018 to 19, around 219 ships, which accounted around 17.73 lakh megatons we have seen. And in 2019 to 20, we have seen 202 vessels were dismantled there. So yes, of course there is impact because of current situation due to COVID-19. So since the beginning of 2021, we have seen only 26 vessels have reached Holland Yard. But anyway, vessels which are purchased by various owners, it is available here and there, which is said to be reached this Holland ship recycling facility. So we have seen the role of ship recycling state, ship recycling facility owners, ship owners' responsibility in order to ensure environmentally friendly ship recycling. We have seen in the previous slides. So we'll see the ship dismantling process now. So which is taken part in Holland Socia ship recycling yard. So most probably most of the plots, there are around 150 plots actively involved in carrying out this ship dismantling process. So what are the various facilities required, or such as temporary storage of oil sledge, PCB containing waste, and storage tank for bilge and ballast waters, space for welding and cutting operations, temporary storage of scrap, and then asbestos handling facility, radioactive material handling chambers, protective ware keeping rooms, and then area for loading and unloading of using trucks to be transported through roadways and walk-through areas, and area for administration purposes. And it is recommended as part of safety measures to maintain some open spaces between 10 to 15 plots in order to provide space for the safety and security by means of emergency access, parking, waterline installations for emergency services, access to beach, etc. So it results in directly around 60 to 70,000 jobs directly, and directly and indirectly results mostly around 3 lakh jobs globally. So let us see the sequence of ship dismantling. First, we carry out a vessel survey in order to plan the work based on potential locations of hazardous materials. Second, we remove fuels, oils, and other liquids and combustible materials, based on which hot work permits will be checked for dismantling the ship and to ensure safety of workers. And then we remove the equipment such as anchors, chains, and small equipments are removed initially. Then large reusable components such as components of engine are removed once they become accessible. And then these reusable materials and equipments which we have taken will be sold directly through the second-hand market available outside the Holland market. So once the propeller and other major equipments are removed, the remaining portion will be pulled into shallow water. And followed by that, we take the process of removing and disposing asbestos clearly as per the guidelines given by the regulation. We have to follow the guidelines and dispose it properly. So we'll not get into that because being a controversial area here. And then we go for surface preparation for cutting. First, paint is removed after asbestos and PCBs are removed, and followed by that the presence of or to remove potentially toxic materials. Maybe it should be taken care of by providing a specific cutting preparation should be given, such as grid blasting like this. Then we go for metal cutting. That is, first the upper decks and superstructures and systems are first removed, and followed by the main deck and lower decks. And then mostly the technique which we use for metal cutting is by means of oxy-fuel cutting torches. Sometimes it can be using shear saws also, based on the if it is non-ferrous metal only. So mostly through the visit to Holland during my postgraduate program, I have seen they use oxy LPG mixture for cutting operations there. And then we go for recycling or disposal of scrap through the second-hand market, and then we go for reuse of materials. Many parts can be directly used, like electronics and then furnitures, electronic equipments. Everything can be directly purchased in the second-hand market and can be used for domestic purposes there. Only one thing which is to be kept in mind as per the regulations, due to the security issues, it can be misused by anti-socialists. Likewise, the communication equipments like walkie-talkies and these things should be handed over to the government prior to to the authorities prior to beaching. So that's the process involved in the ship dismantling. So I'd like to show a few pics which I have taken on my own during my project there. This is the entry into ship recycling, Holland Social Ship Recycling Yard. So where the dismantling process is being taken care of. You can see the plates cut in proper dimensions as required, and which will be taken for civil construction purposes. One example, and you can see one vessel which is beached prior to dismantling, and safety equipments, oxygen plant, and then fire extinguisher arrangements. So most of the equipments were old one, which is operated by diesel, high-speed diesels, for example. So the energy consumption is much less compared to other yachts in other countries where they use more energy consuming technologies there. So you can see one of the oldest equipment still which is functionable, and cranes, loading of offloading to the trucks to be taken to the reusable sites, and second-hand market where all those furnitures, electronic equipments, everything, all tools, auxiliaries, lamps, auxiliary diesel motors, pumps, winches, cranes, radar and electronic equipments are directly reused, and then a few life-saving appliances, fire-saving appliances, after taking it to for renovation and after presenting it to the class, it can be again certified and used on board like this. So most of the equipments are sold in the second-hand market, and the exit from the yard, you can see a truck which is carrying oxy cylinders used there. Now, as we all know, the oxygen available for the industry has been stopped and been taken for our domestic purpose to be used in hospitals for this situation. So, like initially introduced, most of the materials, 90 to 95% of materials are reused, which can be categorized into scrap materials, solid waste, and liquid waste, which will be disposed through treatment plants. solid waste through a centralized disposal facility run by Ship Recycling Association India and GMB, and scrap materials which is disposed for reuse through scrap market. So 70% of materials, around 70% of materials from the vessel is re-rollable plate. So you can just see an idea for a general cargo vessel. The weight loss due to its service condition may be around 9 to 15 percentage. 56 to 70 percentage will be re-rollable plate, and 10% of melting scrap, 2 to 5% of cast iron, and 1% of non-ferrous metals, 4 to 8% of machinery, and 5% of furnitures like wood and other furniture equipments like this. So waste which is to be disposed as per guidelines such as asbestos, glass, sludge resistant, plastics and cables, rubber, fiberglass, resin, iron scales, etc. will be taken care of regulations by GMB to dispose it properly. So, and technical environmental impact assessment guidance manual has been for shipbreaking yards has been prepared by Ministry of Environment and Forest, and which is available in the online source system, which is to be which gives us certain guidelines for shipbreaking yards to be followed. One main task is identifying the hazardous material. That is what now the convention has taken care of, such that it should maintain a inventory of hazardous material list, which will be available on board, and during the duration of recycling, it will be handed over to the ship recycling yard operator. It is made easy now, but still that technical guidance can be followed with. You can see the annexure 1, which gives the elements of ship breaking process. Annexure 2, list of hazardous material and substances that are applicable to ship breaking. Annexure 3, main items of ships and substances of concerned with disposal options. Annexure 4, preventive measures for environmental elements of concern. Like we have the responsibility of learning the convention of the conventions, just MARPOL, SOLAS, different annexures. We'll have to have an idea on various annexes from technical guidance for shipbreaking yards also. So just for information purpose, which has around 16 annexes, and which has been categorized into different zones where much care should be taken at that area. In the primary stage, much care should be taken for oils and fuels. It should be removed properly, and then bilge and ballast water should be sampled and removed carefully, and likewise. Just an additional information. So we'll come to proposal for enactment of registration for recycling of ships. So based on EU ship recycling regulations, shortly called as EU SRR, and then Hong Kong Convention, IMO, which has led to development of guidelines by IMO. Likewise, we'll have to have idea on that, and based on which we have to take care of this EU SRR, because some 4-5 years back, European Union countries refused to send their vessels for recycling in our area, that complaining that we are not taking care of the environment likewise. So for that purpose, the EU ship recycling regulations came into picture, which was set up to ensure that proper vessel dismantling method are used to ensure safe disposal or recycling of all the components, including hazardous material. So it entered into force in December 2013 and concerned all EU flagged ships as well as ships from third countries calling it a European port or anchorage of 500 GT or above. So the rules relating to hazardous material on ship has been framed. First, the EU SRR, first it prohibits or restricts the installation and use of hazardous materials such as asbestos or ozone depleting substances on board ships. Second, it makes mandatory for ships to have on board a certified inventory of hazardous material specifying the location and approximate quantities of those materials. So it has been ratified by Hong Kong Convention. Yearly ratification. It basically constitutes an yearly ratification of Hong Kong Convention for the safe and environmentally sound recycling of ships. So we know the Union Cabinet has approved accession to Hong Kong International Convention for safe and environmentally sound recycling of ships 2009, which was adopted at a diplomatic conference held in China in 2009, ensuring that ships which being recycled doesn't pose any unnecessary risks to human health and safety and the environment. It addresses the issues, all the issues around ship recycling, including the probable presence of environmentally hazardous substances, and also addresses the concerns about working on environmental conditions in many of the ship recycling facilities globally, and which covers the design, construction, operation and preparation of ships so as to facilitate safe and environmentally sound recycling without compromising the safety and operational efficiency of ships. And then the operation of ship recycling facility is in a safe and environmentally sound manner, and the establishment of an appropriate enforcement mechanism for recycling ships and incorporating certification and reporting requirements. So in order to keep the market successful, now we are leading to tackle the hurdles. Our government has passed the bill, recycling of ships bill 2019, which has approved the proposal for enactment of recycling of ships bill just by following the EU SRR convention, ratifying the Hong Kong convention there. So that is which the bill restricts and prohibits the use or installation of hazardous material, which applies irrespective of whether the ship is meant for recycling or not. However, this restriction or prohibition on the use of this hazardous material would not be applicable to warships and non-commercial ships operated by the government. And the provision of Hong Kong Convention will be implemented under the provision of recycling of ships bill 2019 and rules and regulations framed there and there. So, like said in the initial introductory slide, to make we have to break, but in the end we create, isn't it? Now the government of India aims to grab 50% share in the global recycling. Now we are somewhere around 30%. So we know there are around 55,000 merchant ships globally, out of which 1,000 are recycled every year, and 400 of these 1,000 ships are recycled in India, which is around 40% of global recycling. And beaching of ships for dismantling at Holland Shipbreaking Yard is increasing post-lockdown, and fiscal 2020-21 is expected to be best for business at Holland, which will witness 40% of global ships recycling year. We know Holland is blessed with natural opportunities with tides of say 10 to 12 meters, so we should make use of it properly. So this 40% now we are aiming to, government is aiming to take it to around 50% there. So like as through studies we have seen, the main contribution is by means of manpower, which is achieved by means of through migrant workers from UP, Bihar, Jharkhand and Odisha, which is accounted around 80% of workers directly employed in shipbreaking at Holland. So study shows that most of the workers settle there permanently, live there. They can earn amount around 25 to 30k. Only few have left to their native places due to this current situation. So, and it is observed through official information after the post enactment of recycling legislation by Parliament. INS Virat is the biggest ship which has been taken for recycling there, and Government of India is confident that recycling industry will grow massively with Europe and other countries ready to send their ships for breaking in regard to once we have passed that recycling of bills 2019 in view of Hong Kong Convention ratification. So, so we are looking to double the contribution to from recycling industry to countries' GDP, say to over $2 billion US post enactment of this law, recycling of ships bill 2019. So, and also it aims to take direct jobs from recycling sector, say about now around 15 to 60,000 to around 90,000 to 1 lakh. And even during the lockdown period, around 50 vessels have reached Holland for recycling, and most of the vessels which are bought during the lockdown period are still laying there. And it is expected that most vessels will reach India in 2021-22 for recycling. As of current statistics, India recycles 70 lakh GT of ships per annum, while Bangladesh is contributing around 68 lakh GT. Pakistan scraps 37 lakh GT. So China accounts for 34 lakh GT of recycling. So once again, for additional information, we are handling 70 lakh GT per annum. Bangladesh 68 nearer to us, and Pakistan 37 lakh GT, like this. So these are the four countries which accounts for 90% of ships recycled globally. And post enactment of Recycle Act, we keep an eye on achieving the 50% of global share, as the countries, European Union countries will send the ships for recycling once we ensure that we will follow environmentally friendly recycling process and take care of ensure the safety of yard workers. And with the enactment of legislation, India has set global standards for safe and sound environment friendly recycling of ship, ensuring adequate safety of ship recycling yard workers. And not only that, to enhance the increase in business, many recycling plots at Holland are now getting the SOC, that is Statement of Compliance with the Hong Kong Convention. So, as a result of which, 10% of countries' secondary steel needs will be as outcome of ship recycling yards will be met in eco-friendly manner, like I said in the introductory part. That is the initiative taken by Government of India to result in sound recycling in an eco-friendly manner here. So in the last 10 years, there is a drastic change, good change taking care of the environment in the world-class level. So now European and other advanced nations started sending their vessels for recycling here. So 3 million tons of steel is recycled here in our nation annually. And the central government gets revenue, say around 600 to 700 crores. And whereas state government gets 250 crore revenue from the area of ship recycling here. So as of current scenario, in the beginning of 21, only 26 vessels have reached Holland yard. Let us hope the situation gets okay and we come back Not only that, due to since we have started following those regulations, where neighboring countries doesn't follow it, they have not made it mandatory, whereas we have made it mandatory here. There is little problem in that area also, since the neighboring countries offer much price per ton, say for example for approximately 460, around 460 to 470 dollars per ton they offer, but where it is not possible in our nation due to the expense which is to be borne due to this legislation act here. That is the reason for business slump as of now. We will work for positive impact very soon post worldwide lockdown. So we will not miss out this thing. So like we come forward for donating organs, ships are at the end of the life they donate their organs by contributing to steel industry. So we will not waste those materials, we will use it efficiently, which will be enhanced by recycling of Ships Bill Act 2019. So the steel scrap from the demolished ship, which is the major source of raw material for re-rolling mills in our country. Normally at least 70% of total light displacement tonnage of a ship broken constitutes of re-rollable scrap. For example, if you take capital investment required for producing 2 million tons of steel through ship recycling will be only less than 300 crores. Whereas if you use the normal technologies, it will be around 6,000 crore. See where is 300 crore and 6,000 crore. Look at the difference when we get more material for recycling through this. So we'll have to take care of that. So and other study shows that steel, to manufacture steel from recycled steel, as in view of energy consumption, it will be around 6 to 15 megajoules, whereas from iron it will be 20 to 15 megajoules. Just imagine how much natural resources we will be wasting. So we can save by using the steel scrap properly. We can save the environment, which we can contribute more from our part to Paris Convention to tackle the challenges in the area of climate change, and also will ensure the employment to around 1 lakh people, and directly and indirectly globally around 5 lakh peoples. So to meet the global changes, Government of India has taken much initiative by targeting to doubling the capacity we have seen. So using this, let's play important role by contributing more to Paris Convention on climate change. Let us take the responsibility of sound environmentally ship recycling and take care of our environment. With this, I will wind up my session. Thank you.
Yes, sir. I finished, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Sir, Madesh, sir, I finished, sir.
Yeah,
Okay, participants, any queries?
yeah. Okay, this is Vishweshwaran.
Yes,
Thank you very much for very informative these things.
Yes, sir.
And, in fact, when I was working for Barcelona, we used to source in 80s and 90s. We used to source some of the items which you cannot get very readily. Used to go to Along or get the materials. That time the people are not aware of the real worthiness of the parts. They used to give it by weight. Now the people have become very smart. They know the value of the products. Some of the products we have in our shipping campus, in our college, is from the shipyards only.
Yes,
Most of them are recyclable and reusable also. If people have adequate knowledge, they can reuse it. And now many companies have come out offering to get an inventory of the IHM, and then they want to offer their services, because as the legislation has become very tough. Even in our exams, now the Hong Kong Convention and IHM have become a very focal point in our for the cadets when they are appearing for exam and all. They are asking a lot of questions. Thank you very much, sir, for enlightening us. This is very, very important. It has taken a lot of significance in the of late. Of late, it has taken a lot of significance in the.
Okay, sir.
A lot of. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for this thing.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the wonderful opportunity, sir. From my side.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Manish Babu, sir. You have, I mean, really shared your knowledge with regards to recycling of ships. I hope our cadets and faculty members are also learning a lot. Your presentation has been wonderful. Wish you all the best, and we look forward for you as guest lecturers and so on in our academics, sir. I hope you can help us out with regards to this recycling part of it as a separate topic, and one of the units you can just take for us. Thank you very much, sir. Again, I hand over the mic to the organizer, Dr. Shanti Madam. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the wonderful opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. Very important topic you are today given, sir. Thank you very much,
thanks everyone for the patience and watching. Thank you all. Thanks for the wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Take care, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mangesh, sir. Amiraj, sir.
Ma'am, I'm here, ma'am.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you. Amiraj, sir.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Yes, sir. Please introduce the next guest, sir. Thank you.
Okay, madam. Okay, madam. Okay, welcome to all. I am very great pleasure to introduce our next guest speaker, Dr. Mangesh, sir. Served as a marine engineer on board ships of Anglo-Eastern Ship Management, Hong Kong. He obtained his doctorate in IC engines and published 14 research papers in Elsevier journals with impact factors more than 5. He conducted hydroprocessing experiments in partnership with the catalysis division of IIT Madras and filed 5 US patents in 2020. His area of research includes solid waste to fuel conversion. Dr. Mangesh sir has been chosen as a reviewer of research articles of prestigious Elsevier journals like Fuel Processing Technology. He also serves as a doctorate committee member, that is a DC member for IMU to guide PhD scholars. Now I request Dr. Mangesh sir to proceed your valuable presentation. Thank you, sir.
We welcome you on behalf of AMIT, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And actually, I was organizing a workshop currently. Currently, I am organizing a workshop with Kerala University for their PhD scholar. Yeah. And then a week back, I got a call from Dr. Shanti saying that, sir, you should sure come to our AMET and do a FDP. I told ma'am, I was thinking like she must be joking because AMET has some of the best faculties and why they do need me to come and do a FDP for them. And then I was giving her some excuses because I cannot manage both the workshops at the same time. But then she changed the topic and she told that, sir, you are a mariner with a research experience. Sure, you should share with our cadets. And then immediately I couldn't refuse it anymore. Then I told her that somehow I'll manage and I'll give a presentation. For the cadets, I'm always there. So that's how I came up over here. And Dr. Shanti is a good marketing person. She knows how to pick up the mariners and bring on board for teaching here.
Thank you.
And shall I start my presentation, sir, today?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Am I audible and my screen is visible, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Audible, sir.
Okay. And during this 5-day session at AMET, I noticed that there was a presentation about nanotechnology by a Dean of Nautical Sciences. Right? That was really a motivating presentation from a mariner, that too from a navigating side, to come into the atomic level and take a session. Like that must be very enterprising for everyone and motivating for everyone. Today, I'll also be dealing at the nano level for the molecular study of our marine fuel.
Okay, sir.
Yes, ma'am. And when we see a nano level, ma'am, can you see the writings I'm making here?
Yes, sir. Little. Yes, sir.
I'm writing on the PPT. Can you all see that?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, ma'am. So at the nano level, let us see what is affecting. I mean, let's say I take this corona here, this virus. Okay, that looks similar to our virus. And if I put a line here, and I take this as 1 mm, size of the thickness of this line as 1 mm. If I put 1 million of these viruses into this line, and still this 1 mm will be filled up with 1 million viruses. Now that is the size what we are dealing with, and this little fellow is the size of 50 nanometers. So that's the size of our virus, which is locked down the entire world for last 1.5 years, most probably for 2 years. And this little fellow, which is such just 50 nanometers in size, can do such colossal damage. The damage cannot be measured at all, at what is happening at the nano level. Okay. Now, we will be extending to sub-nano levels. The study today will be at the sub-nano levels where...
Sir, excuse me, sir. Mangesh, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Put in presentation, sir. They have to tell not readable similarly, sir. In presentation, we will have to put it, sir.
Sir, you have to put in the slideshow.
Yes, sir. You have to put in slideshow.
Okay, ma'am. I can put it in the slideshow.
Oh, okay, sir.
Okay. Can I go with this, ma'am, now?
No, sir,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's okay now.
It's okay, right, sir? So I was telling about this nano level particles, this coronavirus. I'll start again. Coronavirus. When I draw a line, the thickness is just 1 mm, and this thickness you can fill up 1 million viruses in that. That means a 50 nanometer size virus occupy 1 million. I can fit it into this thickness of 1 mm. Okay, in 1 mm, so much of virus is there. So this tiny little fellow locked us up for about nearly 2 years and brought so much of damage. Like today's study will be at the sub-nano level. Yeah. I will be taking now. Can everyone see this scribbling, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So these sub-nano levels, what we are talking is 1 nanometer can have about about 7 to 10 atoms. So imagine 50 nanometer size virus can have about 350 atoms inside. So that is the size we are talking about today. We will be going sub nano levels, and take out this compound here. I take this compound here. It is hexene diol, which is nothing but I have given a fancy name here. In ordinary term, it is alcohol. Now this molecule here is one of the many in the HFO. In HFO, this molecule forms one of the family of the molecules in the HFO fluid. You all know what is HFO, right? Heavy fuel oil. The workhorse fuel for our marine diesel engine. Now imagine this small molecule, when it is doing a combustion, it can drive a ship of about several 100,000 tons of cargo and pushes them across. So again, this molecular level, the molecular level of energy when you multiply into all the fuel consumption, you do it, drives the entire ship. So what is most important is that we have to study at the molecular level and how this marine fuel can affect your performance and your emissions, right? Today that is the most hot topic going on. Your performance as well as both depends on these molecules. So let's go and study about this. What are these molecules and what are the different structures are there and what we can do with it. Now, the other one is normally marine engineering. Marine engineering deals with dismantling, assembling, correct? But today you will be dismantling and assembling molecules. I'll be demonstrating how we have done that so that we can modify this HFO fuel. Now, how to modify it and what are the components there? We will be stripping the atoms and assembling these atoms back in. That must be interesting, right? Instead of doing all your centrifugal pumps and all your pistons and connecting rods, today we'll be dismantling and assembling your molecular level fuel. So now, what is the motivation to study a marine fuel at the molecular level? There should be some motivation to study that. Okay. Well, let's see the next slide. Here you have your NOx, SOx and CO2. The main motivation is because my IMO is pushing me to go for a reduction in emissions. So that, let me see at the molecular level what we can do for this so that we can take care of some of the requirements of IMO. So now we see that for a NOx is already taken care by primary methods and secondary methods. Secondary methods, you have your SCR, which is taking care of your NOx to reach your tier 3 levels. When you go for your SOx, you have your with scrubber, correct? With scrubber and without scrubber. Without scrubber. So these two things have been fairly enough taken care. A lot of studies already done by previous people. I'm not going to go into this that much. Maybe a little bit I'll touch up and go. My main area will be CO2. Now there is no technology here to reduce this fellow. CO2 has no technology to reduce. The only way we can reduce CO2 is to reduce our fuel consumption. Or, I can add an or here, change the fuel. Now, how to change that? We'll study that step by step, how to change the fuel. This is the only option you have for CO2. Or totally leave a fossil fuel and go for some other method of driving the ships. So that is the only option we have here. Let's go to the consumption. As of you know that about 250 million tons of HFO is being used every year by the ships. So that is the most highly consumed fuel in shipping compared to your gas oil or to your LNG. LNG has just reached about 5%. And LNG is still a long way to go to catch up with the HFO. The global SO2 emissions, I'll just touch up here. Some interesting points are there in SOx which many people have not highlighted it. In shipping, this blue color tells you about only the contribution of shipping. So that's very less. But then we have a very proactive IMO. It sits on our back and keeps pushing us to be better. And of course, mariners can respond for that. And we'll try to improve ourselves. So if you see this SOx, for the next up to 2100, it is not going away. As per the report given here by a researcher, he says that the SOx will be there. That means he is expecting the HFO to continue for another 50 to 60 years. Okay. But of course, we will have a lower sulfur fuel. But our contribution is going to be the same or lesser than that. Much lesser than any other method of delivering the sulfur to the atmosphere. Now we will see an interesting parody here. You see that this yellow light indicates without scrubbers, and this green line indicates with scrubbers, and this is without scrubbers. Now, when you use with scrubbers, you can use a heavy oil plus sulfur fuel, okay, because you're using scrubbers. Now, what happens when you use a fuel of HFO minus sulfur, which is not having sulfur? This yellow line indicates that the refinery has to do a lot of work to remove this. We call that as HDS, hydro desulfurization, to remove the sulfur from the fuel. Now they are going to spend a lot of energy to remove that, so they need 17 metric tons per annum of CO2. They are going to release it. Okay, IMO says you don't release it, but the other fellow is going to release that. Okay, this anyway, there is no coordination between these two people who are nothing but one is your producer and your user, and the user is represented by IMO. The producer has his own associations, right? So this is an anomaly here, which I like to put it across here. So when you come to your again, there's an interesting fact here about SFP. You take the center line indicates the temperature impact is 0 on the atmosphere, correct? This is your temperature impact on your climate. Now, interestingly, your yellow one is your CO. The CO shows a positive impact of about 0.4 degrees over a period of, let's say, 20 to 100 years. It will be having an impact of 0.4 degrees. But look at SO2 and NOx. They are showing on the negative side. That means they are cooling the atmosphere. So the net fact, the ships are releasing CO2, SO2, as well as your NOx. Now, all this net effect, ship has been cooling the atmosphere. Now there is a wrong notion going on around that we are contributing to the global warming. No, never. We were not contributing to the global warming so far. So far, I add the word so far. But since 2020, we are going to add to the global warming because we are removing these fellows out with the Tier 3 regulations. Now what happens? We are going to be a net contributor to the global warming because we are going to dump only CO2 into the atmosphere. Our cooling agent SO2 is not there. Okay, fine. Sulfur has its own negatives, the other negatives, right? But when I am concentrating only on global warming, then SO2 was a positive factor. Okay, we have studied all that. Now let's go back to our CO2. Now this is where is the headache is CO2. Okay, for a shipping, the headache is CO2. Now, how we can strategies to reduce fuel consumption? I told you only fuel consumption can really bring about a change in the carbon dioxide, right? So that means I have to improve the energy efficiency. That means my engine efficiency has gone up, has to go up. So they have brought this EEDI and your EEXI and all these are coming up. They are going to add a burden on the designer as well as the operator. Of course, we are the operators there. So definitely our load is going to go up here. The other one is to do alternate fuels. Okay. Now let's see how much alternate fuels have been employed and what all there have been developments. But I would still say they are all in the slightly above the experimental stages. This is the line of experimental stages. They are somewhere here. Definitely there is a chance of these guys to pick up and go up. Alternate technologies. I mean, these are like you say the solar, you have your wind sails and all coming up, but they are still at the drawing board as well as at the small experimental level and adapted to a marine environment. The ship is sailing on different conditions and different loading conditions, weather patterns, so much like how these alternate technologies, they have to prove themselves compared to our HFO. I always have a small bias to HFO because as a sailor, I have a small love towards this HFO. Compared to HFO, the alternate technologies are going to take their time to establish themselves to come into the market. Now, I have made another option here, which is where we have done some experiments. Myself, I've joined with IIT Madras and we did some experiments there. to modify this HFO. Molecular dismantling and assembling of HFO, we done that. So I'll discuss that little later then. So the first point, when you see here, improving the energy efficiency, let's see what has been done like to improve. We take one case study of MAN diesel. MAN is a pioneer in marine diesel, right? Initially it was MAN B&W, now it is purely MAN diesel. Now these guys, they keep on increasing your stroke length, correct? The engine stroke length keeps on going up. Now they have brought up something called a green engine called G70, G80 and all. They have got the G series. The S series has been serving the marine industry for many decades. Now they have come with G70. If you see the stroke to bore ratio, from 4 it has gone up to 4.615. The G60 model has gone up, and again the G50 also has gone up. The higher the stroke, the more is better will be your combustion, because your P peak to the ratio of your P mean effective pressure will be higher. When it is higher, your combustion efficiency is much better. So there are other benefits also of a long stroke. We'll see that when during a question hour, the cadets are interested, I can answer them when they ask them. Okay, let's take a case study here. The case study is about, we have selected a Cape-size bulk carrier that is done by MAN Diesel. No, it's not done by myself. It's done by MAN Diesel. They selected a ship speed of 14 knots and they selected 2 engines. Okay. This G70 and S70, they have selected it, and different propeller diameters with their different pitch diameters and all this they have taken. And the why this is that, let's say an owner is approaching a MAN Diesel and he wants to purchase a ship where he wants 14 knots for his bulk carrier of 2,05,000 dry weight tonnage. Then what engine we can select? MAN is going to offer him 2 engines. Now let us say how MAN will justify that when it comes to saving fuel. So okay, this chart must be looking a little bit complicated for the cadets. Let me simplify that. Here you have on your x-axis your RPM, your y-axis is your power, okay. And this black line represents your propeller curve, and the ship is supposed to be selected for 14 knots, and then you have 2 engines, this blue color one and the green color one. Now let me select only the blue one, okay. Now when I select this blue one and connect it to this point here, and I bring it out here, you can see that this represents the engine layout, right? The engine layout where this is your upper speed limit, the speed limit is your upper, your speed limit which is lower, the mean effective pressure at the upper end, mean effective pressure at the lower end. And why this particular rectangle is, this engine manufacturer says your MCR can be at anywhere in this point. Okay. Your propeller curve is going up, your MCR can be anywhere. And of course the MCR will be at the point here. And then we have some NCR here, which is your normal continuous rating. At this point your MCR is here. Now the designers have said that for a 8.3 diameter propeller, my NCR is here for the blue, okay. And for this particular application, the MAN says that they can deliver 14 knots for the ship. Okay, now that is what the owner wants, and this is what MAN is delivering. Let us see at what power it is delivering. It is delivering at 17,500 kilowatts. So that is the kilowatts is offered by MAN at a speed of about 87 RPM. Approximately, or 88 RPM. So that's the first option, because the blue indicates S670, X70 engine, the S class, SMC class, right? Now the G engines have come. Again, when it comes to the G engines, of course they'll have a better option to the owners. So this is the layout diagram for the G. So I take out this green out separately and I'll offer you here. And again this G, when it is operating at a higher speed limit and a lower speed limit, upper and lower, and then your MEP is again upper and lower, my normal continuous rating spot will be somewhere here. You can see that one is somewhere here. It is here. And they are matched with different propellers. They got the most optimum propeller for that is 8.8 meters. And when they are operating at this point, they are able to deliver 14 knots. Now look at this. This is the G70 engine and this is the S70 engine. Both are able to give 14 knots. But the point here is G70 gives you 17,000 kilowatts. With 17,000 kilowatts, they are able to give you a 14 knots by a G engine, whereas your SMC class gives you some 500 to 600 kilowatts higher to deliver this 14 knots. So you can see that the efficiency has gone up by 600 kilowatts. That means you have saved so much of power by 600 kilowatts and over 17,500, then I'll get about, you can say that 3%. So much, see, 3% they are able to achieve is not a small deal. It is very tough to achieve it. Where they have said the 3% is not fuel, it is power savings. Okay, I would say that it is power savings. And imagine, man must have suffered so much to get this 3% saving in your power. Okay. That's the level of research and commitment going on at MAN engines. Now let's see another option here. They have a suite of ships, I mean engines. There are so many types of G engines which are offered. All are operating at a very low speed. You can see that, and almost they are reaching the stalling speed. Look at that, like 58 RPM to 68 RPM. It is at a very low end, right? Compared to your SMC class, which is operating at about 72 to 80 RPMs. Much lower. I mean, I don't know in future they'll go to 40 or 50 also. We don't know. But this engines at every knot level, when you select the engines, they'll deliver about 3% savings in fuel. In the power, not the fuel. You have to note it down. Again, I mentioned it is power savings. Okay. The next slide. This is your SFOC. You must be knowing all marine cadets. You must be knowing what is SFOC. Specific fuel oil consumption, which is given in grams per kilowatt hour. If you see that the fuel savings is about approximately 2%. It is about 2% of savings. So MAN has worked so hard to get a 3% saving in power plus a 2% saving in fuel. These are different engines which is operating at the NCR level. They are given at the NCR level. You can see that at the NCR level, you get a 2% saving. To get 2% saving, okay, MAN works so hard to get a 2% saving. Now let's see the other one. This is the net saving, fuel consumption saving. Okay. That means my power is around 3 and my fuel is around 2. And they are able to optimize and get up to 7.8% savings for a 6G70, a 6-cylinder G70 as compared to a 6-cylinder S70 engine. So much of hard work has gone up to achieve this 6, because 3 into 2 is about 6, and due to optimization and further refinement, they are able to reach up to 7.8 about fuel savings. This is the fuel savings. This is power saving, and this is your SFOC savings, and this is your fuel savings. So that much of hard work goes to achieve 6 to 8% of fuel savings. So we have to work very hard. So again, I put it across here. So the performance of G-type engine is nothing but to reduce the power, reduce SFOC, and thereby a reduced fuel consumption, and meet IMO EEDI targets. So the designer, MAN is a designer, right? They have designed a G-type engine to meet the IMO EEDI targets, maybe 2025. They are clear up to 2025, and then after that we have to see what they can do. how much they can squeeze out. So what MAN has decided is that they are struggling to get this 2% and 1% and all that. So now what happens, like I told you all before that, we go back to this slide, strategies, right? So let's think how MAN will be thinking for the next step. Strategy is that they have done this. They have improved the engine efficiency. Next what? Because IMO is going to come back with a higher target, right? Now they have to be ready for that. So they are going for the alternate fuels. The next step is that they have to achieve a higher reduction in CO2. So they are now targeting a lower fuel consumption through alternate fuels. So now this is a study they have made. I hope you all can see that. If you want, I can zoom it up a little bit more. So these are the alternate fuels. Okay. Now there are a lot of fuels there, but what impresses from a point of view of a fuel person who has done research in fuel is LPG. This guy is very, very promising. I'll be dealing with the LPG from a carbon number point of view in the further studies what we are going to do. LPG is very promising. Okay. Of course, methanol is there, but then combustion characteristics are not so favorable, and your gross calorific value or your net calorific value of the fuel is much, much lower compared to a LPG. Now I'll tell you about LPG. Beauty of LPG is it is the lowest carbon number. It is the lowest carbon number, and LPG is also, see, it is low in carbon number but very high in net calorific value. And I hope cadets know how much it is. It is 50 megajoules per kg. So if you burn 1 kilogram of LPG, you can get a net output of 50 megajoules. Okay. Comparatively, your diesel can give you 43. Your HFO can give about 32. So imagine if you convert it from HFO to LPG, straight away you get a 20% savings. Don't need to do anything. 20% saving is coming from conversion from HFO to a LPG. Straight away, your benefit is there. That is why MAN is focusing on that. And these are clever buggers, right? Because they hold the market, the big market they are holding it. So they have to be one step ahead of IMO. I'll tell you that MAN is always ahead of IMO. They don't wait for IMO. These guys are doing 24/7, 365 research to improve and see what will be the future. You see what is the next new building project. They will only think about the future. Okay. Now after LPG, what is most promising is hydrogen. I have my fingers crossed because its safety and all is a question mark. You can use it for fuel cells, etc. Ammonia is coming up as a good fuel. It's an amine fuel, but it is having a slightly better age also. And IMO has ships running on ammonia. They are doing a lot of experimental ships with ammonia. So that work is going on. So these three, ammonia, methanol and LPG are going on. But you see that even after 15 years, the next project, there is still demand for your HFO with scrubber and without scrubber. These two are, the meaning is that when you say that the very low sulfur fuel is without scrubber and with scrubber. So still if you see that HFO gets at about 35% of the shipbuilding are still being projected as for HFO. That means from today, you can still expect about 40% of the ships coming out with HFO. That means, let's say you have about 50,000 ships which are running in the market now. I go to the next slide then and we'll discuss there. So let's say you are about 50,000 ships, odd ships flying in the ocean at any given time. Okay? And your shipbuilding will be around 800 ships per year. Now, what is your EEDI? It is only for the new shipbuildings. Okay. That means IMO actually initially what happened is that they thought that they will be able to manage it. But by the time you reach about even 1/3 of this HFO ships, all are HFO, right? This 50,000 is HFO. it is going to take about 10 to 15 years to even reach 1/3 of the fleet. So what happened is that they hurriedly came up with EEXI. No. Even existing ships should have an energy efficiency method for CO2 because they touched the panic button. Okay, so they came with a concept where they said that no, for CO2 we have to take steps with all the ships. So that is a real headache which is going to come very shortly for everyone. I don't know how they are going to do for this. There are a lot of retrofittings and all that to go on to convert that. I don't know. The owners must be in trouble now. Yeah, because they initially focused only on the new buildings, and given that only 800 ships will be coming per year compared to the 50,000 already running, it will take a long time to convert everything. Okay, so this is a shipbuilding project which they say from 2035 onwards. From 2035 onwards, what is expected? See, I told you all, LNG is the leader now. So if you go 15 years from now, your engines are going to be about 50% of the ships coming out are going to be LNG. So that is the projection made by McDougall. It is a study, it is a projection. Okay, but if you take your HFO, it is still going to be at around 25%. It is still not gone. It is still there. So your LPG and your ammonia is also picked up. Yeah, ammonia is also picked up. So all this, our man is working out to try and reduce your CO2. This is what is happening in the drawing boards of MAN diesel. Why? Next one is I want to know that why we have to talk about CO2. Now I will show this in the slideshow because it will be looking dull here. Then I will try to do a zoom up here. And I think you can see this. This is a study made by NOAA, US atmospheric agency, just like your US Coast Guard. These guys are for the atmosphere. Okay, they have done a study saying that for the last 800 years, the concentration of CO2 was fluctuating between 300 ppm to about 180 ppm. When you reach 300 ppm, it is global.